This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, Old Florida cuisine at its best.
Welcome to Paranormal Stakeout, the show that brings you the finest investigators and researchers in the world of paranormal studies. Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, your host on Paranormal Stakeout, and tonight is no exception to that rule as we bring to you Joe Weigant. Joe is a public servant, police officer, spiritualist, Reiki master, martial arts black belt, paranormal investigator. Joe has been practicing martial arts since 1987 and has been studying TCM, meridian theory, and human energy fields as a part of that practice. This led him to Tai Chi, Qigong, and a further study of the cultivation and manipulation of energy. In 2009, Joe's Tai Chi instructor taught him Reiki, a Japanese technique for hands-on healing. He went into the professional practice later that year. He now owns Reiki Choice and has assisted hundreds of his clients to establish holistic health and well-being. Since practicing Reiki, Joe has become to realize that he has the ability to see energy and its flow in the body. He has an ability to detect where energy is stagnant, depleted, draining, or pooling. By balancing the human energy flow, he's been able to help clients achieve health and wellness. He has also discovered that our emotions have a more powerful effect on our health than we could possibly imagine. Joe has also awakened to his psychic mediumship abilities and his talent for spirit communication. Often Joe has talked to his clients' past loved ones while in session and has communicated messages from beyond the veil. Joe has also founded EPIC, the Evansville Paranormal Investigation and Consultations Agency, where he puts his mediumship abilities to work doing sight readings during paranormal investigations. By communicating with both sides of the veil, he's able to bring peace to the living and the dead. Joe has been a guest on several radio programs, including the X-Zone radio show with our friend Rob McConnell and the Science of Magic with Gwelda Wayaka. He now hosts his own radio show, the World Beyond Radio Show, produced by the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Joe's always available for radio and TV interviews, Reiki sessions, tarot readings, and paranormal investigations. I would recommend that you check out Joe's website at reikichoice.com, paranormalpeace.com, and certainly at www.xzbn.net, the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Joe, welcome to the show.
It is a pleasure to be here, Larry. How are you doing today?
Great. It's nice to have a brother officer on the air with me again, and it's exciting. You have an interesting take that I have not seen a law enforcement officer have to the world of the paranormal, and I'm excited to talk to you about that.
Well, I'm excited to get into it.
I got to ask you, first of all, when did you first realize that you had these certain abilities and gifts? When did that come about?
Well, I grew up in a haunted house, And so, seeing things get up and walk around all by themselves, and, hearing voices at night and seeing things move around, and getting into fights with ghosts over what channel we're going to watch on TV, that was just a normal experience growing up. And so I didn't think anything about it. I just figured that was just a normal way of, growing up. And, I was able to see things, see energy and see auras and things. And I kind of shut that down. Whenever I told my mom one morning, hey, you know what? You've got all this red stuff floating around you with little flecks in it. And she said, blink your eyes, quit doing that, get back to your cereal. You got to go to school. And so I just kind of just quit doing it after that. But after I started working with energy in the martial arts, and especially after I started getting into Reiki and started moving energy around and doing things with it, some of these things started coming back to me, and I started, communicating with things during Reiki sessions. And then I started really tuning in and trying to, perfect that and get it to the point where I could actually help people with it. And that's where I am right now, is just get to the point where I can help people understand their own lives and what happens to our lives whenever they're over, and how we can better understand the universe around us and within us.
Well, as a cop, how has this been able to help you in your life as a police officer?
Well, in one of two ways. Sometimes whenever we're, chasing people, back when I was on the street several years ago, if we were chasing somebody, or if we were trying to find somebody, or if I had to go down into a basement and look for somebody, I just always seemed to know where they were. And I could always just find people. I don't know if I just took more time to just, tune in and just say, okay, you know what, this is where I would hide, or what the case was. But I was always able to just find people that were hidden by, nobody else could find. And I always could tell when people were lying to me. It's just, I might not have been the best guy about getting the truth out of people. Oh, sure it is. Yeah, but I never was really the master at being able to get people to tell me the truth, but I could always pick up immediately when they were lying to me. And so that was always a really good pickup for me, is to go, okay, this guy, he's holding something back, or he's not telling me the whole truth, or, whatever the case may be. And so, whenever I started getting better at this particular side of things, it also kind of helped me in that realm too.
Well, we got to get ready to take a break here for these very important messages. We'll get back to you in just a second, Joe. I got a lot more questions to ask. This is a Paranormal Stakeout with Larry Lawson. We'll be back shortly.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere, Florida. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine such as hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining rooms can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you visit, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic downtown Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best. Welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, and our guest tonight is Joe Weigant, great friend and colleague from the great state of Indiana. And Joe, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about Reiki. Can you kind of explain to me and the audience what exactly is Reiki and how does it work? I'm sure I'm butchering the name, but help me with that.
It's actually pronounced Reiki. It's made from two different Japanese words, Rei, which means universal or divine, or kind of like, think of like the force. It's all around us. Mm-hmm. And Ki is that word that you might read in martial arts books, or you might see it in old Japanese karate movies. Ki is that energy that animates us, and it helps to bring us life and vitality. It also translates to breath in some cultures. It's the same thing as Qi in China, or prana from India or Tibet. It's the same as mana from Hawaii. It's basically that universal energy life force. If you think about Star Wars, he wasn't too far off the mark with that. And the only reason it's called Reiki is that the guy that actually formulated the protocol for it was from Japan. Other than that, it might be called any one of a number of different things, depending on what culture or country it originated from. But it's nothing really all that special. If you bonk your elbow on a door frame and you reach up with your other hand and the pain goes away, that's Reiki. It is an inherent part of the human condition. If you're sore, or if you're in pain and someone else puts their hand on you and it makes you feel better, that is Reiki. The only difference between that and what I teach is that we teach methods to kind of ramp that up quite a bit and make it more effective, and give it a protocol that allows people to find relaxation and stress reduction so that way their bodies can heal themselves.
Interesting. Have you had a chance to use this technique successfully in your law enforcement work?
Well, in the level 2 Reiki training, there is a method by which you can send this energy over distances. I've done this on phone calls to Indianapolis, Indiana. I've done this to all across the country. I've done readings with people on the phone and helped them understand things and helped to heal them. And a lot of times when I was on the streets, and that's been 5 years ago, if I got a call to an address that had a really, really tense situation going on, I would send Reiki ahead of me to that location and kind of help calm things down until I could actually arrive physically on scene.
Interesting.
And invariably, I might be 20 blocks away or whatever. And whenever I would arrive, people would be just in a lot better frame of mind, and they would be a little bit more coherent and a little bit more grounded and have a little bit better grasp on their emotional qualities than they would had I not sent it.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I'd like to learn more about that myself with my work out there. I'd like to change gears just a little bit, because I'll be honest with you, Joe, you're probably the first brother cop that I've met that also has psychic abilities. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I'm really interested in how does one communicate with what you refer to as spirit, for example?
Well, think about this. Think about the entire universe is a singular expression of vibration and energy and frequency. Everything that we think that we can take in with our five senses is but just this little tiny piece of the actual reality of the entire universe. The room that you're in right now, you're on your computer. There may be 6 dozen radio stations in your area, and you can't see any one of those. You can't see the cell phone signals in your room with you. You can't see the satellite TV signals in the room with you, gamma radiation, any of that kind of stuff. You can't see it. You can't hear it. You can't reach out and touch it, but you know that its effects are there. You can't see gravity, but you also don't roller skate on stairs because you know what will happen. We know the effects of the things that we can't see and hear. So the way I teach it in my classes is to think of the universe and all of its information as a radio station. Now, if I want to look at somebody's aura and I want to see where energy is moving in the body, I'll tune into that particular frequency to see where their energy is moving. Just tonight, I had a Reiki session with somebody, and she was talking about how tense and how stressed out she was. And I said, well, you pack all of your stress in your neck and shoulders. And she said, yeah, 3 of her doctors also told her that. And I said, yes, but you also get headaches up the back of your head, up towards your crown, and the back of your ears. And she also confirmed that. And then I said, you also have something going on down in your lower abdomen. And she said, yeah, I have irritable bowel syndrome. And, none of these things were filled out on the chart that she gave me tonight. These are things I saw during my scan. Now, when we go back to the radio station analogy, I can tune into that. But at the time that I'm tuning into that, I don't get to pick up dead people. I don't get to pick up, spirit guides or any of these other things going on around me because I'm tuned into one radio station. So if you want to go to the dead people channel, you have to kind of refocus your mind to pick up on that particular kind of energy. But then I lose the ability to see aura of the living people in the room because you can only pick up on one thing at a time. If you don't have any training and you're picking up on too many things at one time, it's kind of like listening to a radio station that has country, rock, talk radio, weather, and traffic reports all going on at the same time. You can't really focus on one individual thing because there's so much interference. And I think that this is the reason why so many people are suffering from anxiety and bipolar and some of these other emotional disturbances because they're taking in so much information and haven't learned how to tune in to one channel while filtering out the others. Okay.
Well, you refer to spirit. I'm assuming that's your spirit guide, but you use that term singularly. And I've heard other mediums use the term that they communicate with spirit. Why is that singular? It may seem like a silly question, but I'm curious, is it a collective or is it truly one spirit guide that you have?
Well, most of us who work in this frame of reference, many of us will have more than one spirit guides, and some of them will come and go during our lives. Some of them will arrive in and they'll teach us certain things, or they'll guide us in a certain way toward how to use certain abilities or how to focus certain abilities. And then after that little job is accomplished, they might go away. Some guides are there for our entire lives. But whenever most of the people who are mediums talk about talking with spirit, it is both a singularity and a multiplicity. It is talking to the spirit world in general. Okay. But being able to just narrow it down to one word, communicating with spirit. It might be, your dead uncle, or it might be my spirit guide, but it's still, I'm communicating with spirit.
Okay. So we have spirit guides. Everybody has a spirit guide assigned to them, so to speak.
Yeah, pretty well. Almost everybody does. It's just that most people just don't realize it. I sat in on a tarot instruction class with a friend of mine several years ago, and a mutual friend of ours was in the class with us. And she had, right there in the middle of the class, a full-out, high-speed panic attack right there in the class.
Mm-hmm.
And, was just short of hyperventilating. And I'm looking at my buddy, and he's looking at me, and we can both see the guide standing behind her, and we're both trying to convince her that this isn't anything sinister or evil or harmful or malicious or malignant. This is your guide wanting to communicate with you, but you have to let him. And it took probably 15 minutes for her to calm down enough to the point where she could actually say, okay, yeah, I can pick up on this or that or whatever. And eventually she maintained over a course of time a communication with this particular guide until his function was completed and he moved on.
Okay, all right. That brings a little bit more light to my mind on it. Certainly, how do we communicate? I've been told, I've heard this many times, we all have this ability. Is that true?
I think it is a part of the human condition that we all have the ability. Now, there are many, many things that get in the way and prevent us from realizing that true potential. I have a lot of people that will write me on Facebook, or they'll call me and they'll say, hey, I've got a 18-month-old daughter who's pointing at the other side of the room saying, Grandma, Grandma, but she's never known her grandma. Grandma died 15 years ago. And I'm going, yeah, but you have to understand, children are the closest to spirit at that age that they're ever going to get. They're still young. They're still operating at that curiosity level. They haven't been trained not to do it yet.
And their minds aren't cluttered either.
Their minds aren't cluttered with religion and social pressure and peer pressure and alcohol and emotional disturbances and all these other things that we let get in our way. We let logic and reason and rationality and all these other kinds of things cloud our intuitive vision to the point where we live almost entirely rationally. We live almost completely left-brained. And we never really tap into that right brain side of us that allows us to see the intuition and allows us to get those feelings and allows us for those communications. And there's just certain parts of our lives and our environment that we allow to creep in that can cloud and blur that communication to the point where we don't get it. And then also, as we grow up, those of us who can do it eventually learn not to ever talk about it because you get ridiculed, you get made fun of, you get outcast. And so you just learn either not to do it anymore or you learn that you just can't talk about it.
Does that happen? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, gosh. It hasn't happened to me in that way. I like I said, I had my mom basically said, stop it, knock it off. And some of the things that I was seeing around the house, whenever I would say them out loud, she's like, oh, that's a load of it. You don't need to, talk about that anymore. And so you learn just not to talk about it. Whenever you've got a small child that's talking to a quote, quote, invisible friend, yeah, that's what's happening. They're having a conversation with a spirit guide in a way that adults have learned to just tune out and not ever pay attention to.
Do you catch much flack in your professional life as a cop?
I don't talk about it here.
Okay.
I get enough grief because of the Reiki that I do, even though that I help people with it. There's just a lot of people that just simply will not wrap their consciousness around that concept. And I've had people, even after I've helped them, ridicule the concept. I mean, I had a guy approach me at the copy machine and, I heard you do this Reiki stuff. I'm like, yeah, I do. Well, can you take care of my headache? Yeah. Tell me in about 30 seconds how you feel. And he looks at me and he goes, it just went away. And I go, yeah, I know it did. I watched it. And he went, it's still bull. And he walked off and sat at his desk. And I'm like, I just took your headache away in 12 seconds or less. And you still don't believe me. You just learn not to talk about that kind of stuff.
It's great. And when we get back, I'm going to talk a little bit about cops and open minds and stuff like that. And also when we come back after this break, I want to spend a few minutes talking about your work with paranormal investigations. So we're going to take a break here in just a couple of seconds for some very, very important messages. I would like to remind everybody to please check out www.xzbn.net, which is the mothership of X Zone Radio. Please check out for our broadcasting schedules. With that, we'll be back to you right after these important messages.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we'll weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the Mutual Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson. I'm back with Joe Weigant here, and we're going to continue this great conversation. When we broke the last time, Joe, we were talking a little bit about your work and how it melded with your professional life as a police officer. One of the criticisms I've gotten from many folks, and I've mentioned this before on the show, was how can you believe in this sort of thing? You're a cop. You're supposed to look at the evidence, and there's no evidence here. It's not real. And one of the philosophies that I have is, do you want a police officer, in particularly a detective like you and I are, to come to your crime scene with preconceived notions, or do you want us to come to your crime scene with an open mind, looking at all the possibilities in order to solve the crime? Usually when I say that, I get a pretty positive response and people seem to get it. But we still do suffer a little bit from people not understanding cops having this sort of belief system. Would you agree?
I couldn't agree more. Actually, because the predominant majority of police officers are very type A, mostly conservative, aggressive personality types. We are this is my box, and anything outside this box, I don't tend to want to agree with. And so we like everything to be in our cute little cop box. And so, if you got, we don't seem to want to acknowledge our acceptance of people who may have an appearance outside of the norm. We all have short hair, and we all go to the gym, and we all take care of the things that we take care of. And so sometimes we just tend to not give enough credit to those people whose lives just live outside of our conceptuality of norm. And so I think that leads a lot to a closed-minded operating system where we're just not able to accept those kinds of things. And I've had conversations with other police officers, and they go, I know there's something weird going in my house, but I just don't believe in ghosts. And I go, I know that I fall down a lot, but I don't believe in gravity. So, and I agree with you. Who would you rather have show up at a an interview or a crime scene or some kind of an investigation? Somebody who has a very small operating system about, this is what I believe, or this is what I thought about this coming over here, and I'm going to operate with that until I get something else that dissuades me from that chain of thought, versus somebody who's willing to take in all the information and then generate a conclusion from there.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I do this show, to try and help open people's minds and realize we've got to look at things from all angles in order for us to solve this big mystery of what is the afterlife. And
absolutely.
And that's my vision for this whole show, is to get those minds open, not only in our business, but in the general public. So, I'm excited to talk with you about that quite a bit. So I appreciate it. I got to ask you another interesting question, because I have some theories on it, and I've talked to other people that have theories. We all know from studies, from stories about the light, and when somebody passes, they go through the light.
Right.
Why don't some spirits cross into that light?
I've done a lot of research on that, and I've had a lot of experience with that. And what I have read from other mediums and from what I have read from other paranormal investigators through their articles and blogs and all that, fits hand in glove with my experiences in dealing with that. And there are, depending on who you read, up to about a dozen different reasons why people don't go into the light. One of the predominant ones is fear of judgment. We've been taught all of our lives here in North America, there's one prevailing religion here in North America, and it teaches that after you die, you're going to get judged for every little thing you thought. And, when faced with that, people are not only frightened of death itself, but then they're afraid of actually going to that place where they're going to get looked at and go, you know what? Remember that time in third grade when you lied about this and that and the other? You're going to go down there and have, forever, you're going to be punished and all that. And so that's one of the predominant reasons people don't want to go into the light, is they fear that judgment, because who can be good enough? That's
sure.
Who can be good enough? Another reason is unfinished business. People that may have been murdered or may have died in tragic accidents feel like they still have some work to do to figure out why or how or under what circumstances they left their bodies. Some people they become so attached to persons, places, and things that they don't want to leave those things. You might have somebody who dies, but they're very, very concerned about their property and they don't want it messed with. And so they'll hang around their house or they'll hang around the farm or whatever it is because they don't want people messing with it. And when you get another family that moves into the home and starts painting and ripping up floors and all that, well, it starts to really get them angry and they start lashing out and throwing things and saying things, and you get
It's their home.
all these
How dare you wreck up my home?
Yeah, actually, it's precisely that. I mean, I died in 1871. How dare you come in here and paint the walls? This house is supposed to be like this forever. And some people, go ahead.
Do you think most of the time they even realize that they're passed on to the? Do you think that they have that level of thought, that level of cognizance?
I think some of them realize that they are no longer physical, but I have heard and read and experienced a number of times. They honestly, the only difference between those people who are no longer with us here and you and me talking here on the phone, the only difference is you and I are wearing meat suits. They're just as alive as you and I are. The only difference is they're not packing around a meat suit with them. And so, they don't understand sometimes why they can't communicate with us. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to communicate with us. And so, there's just, and it's not, this is what really perplexed me. And I had it explained a couple of different ways to me, but when we actually drop the mortal coil, when we unzip this meat suit and lay it aside, and when we go on as a pure energy, we don't immediately right then just go off into some faraway place never to be heard from again. I mean, we're still as right here next to us as we were just moments ago. Mm-hmm. And there's been time and time again where people have near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, and they're standing right next to their physical body. And it may be worked on by surgeons. It may be, mashed up in a car wreck or just fallen off a ladder. And there's the guy standing there looking at his body in the yard. And they're just as alive as they were a moment ago. It's just that they're not wearing the meat suit.
Well, we talk about crossing over. Some spirits doing it, some spirits not going to the life, afraid maybe the elevator is going to go down instead of up. How can we help them cross over? And do they always want to cross over? I realize that they may have thoughts or beliefs they've got work to be done here. But how do we help them cross over when they've passed their time to be here?
For me, in my experience, and there's always going to be somebody to disagree with me. And my experience is sometimes it just takes a little bit of psychology. It just takes sitting down and talking with them and saying, okay, your time here has come to an end. This no longer functions here the way you thought it did. There's other places for you to be. This is really where you're supposed to go. And denying that is painful for you, and you need to be there. I actually did a crossover in a building that used to be a hospital, and it was an asylum for some time. And I ran into the spirit of a girl, and she appeared to me as a 7-year-old girl. And, I have a hard time telling this story because it breaks me up almost every time. But, she had grabbed onto somebody in my group and caused them to have a panic attack because they got grabbed quite painfully. And so I went back up to the upper floor of this building, and I said, okay, you got to come out and talk to me. And here comes this 7-year-old girl. And I said, okay, why are you still here? Her mother, during the time in our American history where people were dropping off relatives at the insane asylums, never to be seen again, her mother had dropped her off as a 7-year-old.
Dear God.
And she didn't want to go into the light because she was afraid she was going to see her mother there. And I had to convince her that once you go into that light, these human-like emotions don't exist for us in this way anymore, and that she's just as eager to see you as you really, really are to see her. And it took about 10 or 15 minutes for me to work through this, and it was painful for her. It was painful for me. I broke down in front of the entire group and had a a really horribly emotional episode. And at the end, whenever she finally crossed into the light, the whole room felt it. I mean, it was a tangible change in the atmosphere. And she went and she's at peace now. And so these are the kinds of things that I do to help the living and to help the spirit.
And that's profound, I've got to tell you. We've got a couple of more minutes before our last break, but I want to ask you this question. There is a line of thinking that we are on this earth, our spirits are on this earth to learn a lesson, to learn how to do something better, maybe to suffer a certain way so that we learn and grow, and then our spirits come back again. How does that theory work with what we just talked about with folks here afraid to go through the light?
Perfect question. Because whenever you have not gone into the light, you basically get trapped in kind of like this in-between zone. You're no longer physical, but you're not where you're supposed to be. And so you maintain the emotional and historical qualities of that last life you had. But once you cross into that light and go into that other realm, this life becomes a book on the shelf. And when you're in that space over there, which I can't reach from here, mm-hmm. You're able to do a review of all the lives that you've had and what lessons you've learned and what lessons that you didn't learn and how you learned them and which way you have to learn them next time. And there you work with spirit, you work with the divine, and you work with other people in your soul group to figure out how you can each teach each other when you come back. And when those conditions are set and everybody is ready to come back to physical reality again, you're born and you try to, learn those lessons with a new set of circumstances. And I truly, honestly think that every single one of us, throughout our multiple existences on this earth, have been male and female, straight, gay, black, white, Asian, rich, poor, oppressed, oppressor, abused, abuser. And we do this so we can learn to purify our spirits.
That's as clear as I've heard it ever put to me. Getting ready to go to our final break here. I would like to invite all of our listeners out there to visit Joe's websites, ReikiChoice.com or ParanormalPeace.com. Certainly you can get to Joe and World Beyond radio show at www.xzbn.net, the X Zone Broadcast Network. Check his show out there. Also, feel free to check out our show, also at www.xzbn.net and www.paranormalFBI if you want to see the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation, which is my group. And with that, we're going to go to our last break. Great show, Joe. Looking forward to these last few minutes together. We'll be right back, folks, after these important messages.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson. I'm here tonight with Joe Weigant, fellow officer, brother officer in blue. Such a great show tonight, Joe. I've learned a lot, and I know our audience has too. We were talking before the break about spirits going to the light and why they do that and why they may not. But one thing that we as paranormal investigators do come across on a regular basis are the residual versus the intelligent haunts. For example, the spirits that react with us as compared to the ones that are just walking in front of us as if they're a recording. Do you have any thoughts on how that occurs? I mean, we've had a lot of talk here on spirits, why they're here and going to the light. What about this residual theory?
Well, it's actually more than a theory. And let me explain 3 different scenarios as to why this works. Think about 3 different kinds of places that you're going to find yourself in throughout your life. Funeral homes, hospitals, and churches. Now, each one of those different buildings has a different energy, and you feel a different way when you walk in there. The reason the residual energy is the way it is because of the emotional content of the people occupying the space. Now, it can either be a similar emotional content over a period of time, like in a church or in a hospital. But sometimes the emotional content is so powerful, like in a homicide scene, for example, that so much energy is happening at one short, brief period of time that the space absorbs that energy. And so I've walked into rooms and I could feel the argument that happened the afternoon before. I've been in rooms and I could see, okay, yeah, even though the walls have changed in this place, I can understand that you still see the old lady that lived here, 2 residences ago, walking from, her knitting room to the TV room, because that's what she did every afternoon at 3. And so she embedded that energy into the place. And the same thing with hospitals. Everybody says, well, I don't like to go to hospitals. Well, think about it. What are hospitals filled with? They're filled with sick and dying people, loved ones who are coming to visit sick and dying people, and overworked, understaffed, underpaid nurses who are having to take care of both. So you have all of this energy basically becoming embedded in the actual physical structure of the building itself. And when you go in there, you feel that. And so, over a period of time, you can pick up on those energies. The same thing happens when people come back from Europe and they talk about going to visit these enormous cathedrals with these big flying buttresses and all this kind of stuff over in France and Germany. And they come back talking about the awe-inspiring, visit that they had to these cathedrals. Well, they've been around for 1,500 years. And everybody who goes in there is of the same frame of mind. So you come away with that residual energy imprint.
So what you're saying is the spirits that we deal with, called the intelligent haunts, if you will, are true spirits, whereas the residuals are nothing more than the energy left from events or people, and really aren't spirits. Okay.
Exactly.
That's an important question I get from a lot of folks, because that really does perplex a lot of people. We have a spot in Fellsmere where they see a woman just walking across the floor of the Marsh Landing restaurant, is oblivious to everything. And that's a question I've gotten quite often, and you've explained it perfectly. I appreciate it.
When I went to Waverly Hills this past May, one of the visions that I was able to see, I had 2 of my students with me, and we're walking down the 3rd floor hall, and behind us we can hear what sounds like like if you get a cart at Walmart and the wheel starts squeaking and flapping, we heard that behind us. Well, I turned around, and both of them turned around all at the same time, and they said, I hear a squeaky wheel. Well, what I saw was a nurse, a very tall, thin nurse, who was pushing one of those high-backed wooden wheelchairs with the little handle sticking out the back, and she's pushing this cart, and there was an older fella with a flannel blanket on, and she was pushing him from one of the residency rooms out toward the porches on the solarium side of the building. And, I'm thinking, well, that's, pretty odd that I would see that as one of those tall-backed wooden, almost kind of like a lounge chair or a deck chair type wheelchair. Right. And when I went and did some research after that, I found out those were the exact kind of chairs that they had in that building at that time. So what I saw was a residual imprint of this nurse pushing a patient out to the solarium.
And it's just that energy that has been absorbed by the wood and the walls or whatever that's just keeps playing like a recorder.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, let's change gears just a little bit, because you are an accomplished paranormal investigator as well as a psychic medium. You've been to some pretty cool places. Now, you talked about Waverly Hills, and you've talked about the nurse with the wheelchair. Tell me about the nurse that choked you.
Well, I didn't want to do too much research into Waverly Hills before I got there. I wanted to go and, just see what I could pull from the site itself. But there were some things I wanted to go and verify with myself. And one of those was the legendary occurrence of the nurse at 502. Now, this happened in the early 30s. And what had happened was a nurse had an affair with a married doctor. This is the story that goes on about this, is that the nurse had an affair with a married doctor, which was, in the 30s, it was a huge no-no. Well, she got pregnant, which was another huge, gigantic social no-no. And rumor has it that they performed a kind of a secret abortion on the site. And the fetus was found in the water filtration plant or the water treatment facility or whatever there. And because of her shame and because of her guilt and all these other things that were going on with the disgrace that would be not only on herself but the hospital, she went up and hanged herself in front of room 502.
Right.
Now, I went up there specifically because I wanted to connect with what people have been saying for years and years is the spirit of that woman is still there. So I went up to that room, and I had a couple of my students with me, and I said, everybody needs to kind of just go away for a while. I want to be quiet, and I got some work I got to do here. And so I tuned into that radio station, and I said, I want to connect with you, and I want to find out what happened here. I want to hear your story in your words. I want to know what you felt that day, because I think it will help us understand you, and it might help you understand where you are.
Okay.
So immediately what I felt was an electrical cord being wrapped around my throat, and it started squeezing and tightening in on me. And I fell backwards up against the wall, and I started gasping and choking and damn near threw up. And I finally walked away from the wall, bent over, and I said, that's enough. You have to stop it. You're killing me. Well, she immediately loosened it up. Of course, that doesn't alleviate the pain immediately. I still had a very long time trying to recover from that episode. And at the time, I didn't know what she used to hang herself. It could have been strips of cloth. It could have been rope. It could have been anything. I found out later that she had used a lamp cord and had tied it to the conduit up above the hallway in front of room 502. And so my feeling of that electrical cord was exactly in line with what I later found out to have been a lamp cord that was used. So
she
that
wanted
for
you
me
to feel.
was embarrassing. Yeah, she wanted me to
you to
feel
feel
that
it.
this is what was going on, and it was it was unpleasant. I have to admit, it wasn't something I ever want to try to experience again. But these are the kinds of things that I was allowed to feel because of the way that I go about doing my business. Now, once that was gone, she left the area. I couldn't reconnect with her. So, the ability to try to cross over or anything else like that did not happen. She basically came in, said, this is what it was like, and then she left, and that was it. I basically had to recover.
My goodness. Tell me, is that the scariest investigation you've had?
I had an officer here, and he texted me one night on the phone and said, we just left a house, and I heard you're into this kind of thing from some of the posts you put up on Facebook. I need you to call me sometime. So I called, and apparently they had a burglary in progress. Now, you and I are both cops, and you know what happens on third shift when you get a burglary in progress. Everybody wants to come in.
Yep.
And, so, I wasn't working that night. I was working in the office where I am. And so, I was not involved in that. But he said basically 6 cars and a canine showed up. And so they immediately start looking around this house, which is a sizable house. And it was about 100 years old. And he said he's trying to go around the basement of the house on the outside to try to see if there was an entry point. And they couldn't find one.
Uh-huh.
Now, the lady of the house said she can't stand going into the basement because it just feels horrible down there, and she keeps it locked with a padlock and will not go down into the basement at all. But on the night that she called, the basement door creaked open, and she heard footsteps coming up the stairs from the basement. So she panicked and called, and everybody showed up. And now, according to this guy, whenever the canine unit went in to go try to clear this house and go find the bad guy, the canine basically went off the charts, barking at the walls, scratching.
I've got about 30 seconds, Joe. I hate to do this to you, but I got about 30 seconds.
The sum of the story is, when we went in there, it was a dark thing that had never been a human, and it was extremely evil and extremely mad, and we had to go in and take care of this thing, and it took a while, and it drained us, and it was a bad, bad situation.
Wow. Well, we're going to have to do this show again because I want to hear some more of these great stories. I want to thank you, Joe, for joining us tonight. And I want to recommend to all our listeners out there, check out Joe's websites, reikichoice.com, paranormalpeace.com, and certainly check him out at www.xzbn.net, the broadcast mothership of our shows. I'm Larry Lawson, your host of Paranormal Stakeout. Check me out, www.paranormalfbi and www.paranormalstakeout.com. Until next time, thanks for joining us, folks.